Hello friends. The Hyderabad Design Forum was founded a few years ago to celebrate design in its various aspects. One of the projects that is currently underway is the documentation of the hitherto unknown presence of stepwells in the state of Telangana. While we were doing this, we have also studied stepwells in Hyderabad city, of which we seem to find that there are over at least 50 that we know of. And this brief presentation that's going to follow is going to look at the history of stepwells in the city. And we hope this information will be useful for you and you'll find it as interesting as we are finding as we go along discovering stepwells in our beautiful city. As an introduction, we are looking at these beautiful miniature paintings of the Deccan School. Most of them have been painted in Hyderabad. The colors, as you can see, are very vibrant. The sense of perspective is perfect. But the striking thing about both these pictures that you see is that they are in a garden. And it is this living in a garden, this partial outdoor living, partial indoor living, that characterizes life in the city of Hyderabad. So as we go along, we'll realize the importance of water in not only irrigating these gardens, but the role that stepwells played in providing water to these beautiful gardens in which these stories are set. There's a popular misconception that Hyderabad was named Bhagyanagar, and that Bhagyanagar was named for this courtesan. I have a different take on this. I think it was called Bhagnagar, not Bhagyanagar. And it was called Bhagnagar because of the several gardens, which are also called baghs in Urdu, that we still continue to see. If you look very casually at the list on the left side, there are several colonies that even today are called baghs, proving that Hyderabad was once a city of beautiful gardens, and stepwells played an elementary role in these gardens. So it's not merely colonies which were named for gardens. Many of the colonies that we see on this map are named for baulis, which is also a word for the stepwell. And we have just listed about 12 of them. I'm sure there are many, many more. So this led us to investigate where these stepwells are, whom they belong to, what has happened to them today. And we started off on this journey of discovery both to the south and to the north of the river Musi. And we've come up with some fascinating findings, which we will be now looking at pretty shortly. So here is a map of Hyderabad as it existed during the Qutb Shahi times. At this point, it's not yet known as Hyderabad. It's known as Golconda. And we see the two lakes, and both the lakes are feeding into the river Musi that cuts across the city in the east-west direction. And we find that there is Golconda Fort slightly to the north, and there is Charminar to the south. There's also on this map a trade route, which is almost going diagonally across the picture. And this trade route plays an important part in establishing the history of the growth of the city and how it prospered because of the trade that came along these routes into Golconda. So the trade route actually stretched all the way from Machilipatnam in the Bay of Bengal, came through Golconda and went north all the way up to Bidar and beyond till it reached Surat, and one branch of it went down to Goa. So this meant that whatever prosperity in the form of trade that came in and out of Hyderabad traveled along this trade route. So we find the presence of stepwells in many caravanserais that were built for travelers and traders who used this route to come to the city. Not only that, we find stepwells in temples. In the state of Telangana, we find stepwells in forts. Within Hyderabad city also, Golconda Fort has nearly about 5 or 6 stepwells that we know about. There are also agricultural stepwells in the areas around Hyderabad city, which provided water for the agricultural produce. Temples themselves were uh, the prominent locations of stepwells, which formed part of the rituals of worship and which were also areas where people could go and clean themselves after a journey before entering the temple. These were called pushkaranis in some cases, but basically they were all stepwells. This is an archival picture on the top of a well in the Hussaini Alam area. The picture I got from a friend of mine whose family owned the bagh in which the stepwell was. He tells very fascinating stories about how, as young children, all the cousins that you see lined up in the gallery of the stepwell here actually used to go swimming in it. They would fish in it for freshwater fish. The ladies of the house would come and they would spread their shatranji and spend hot afternoons during the summer in the shade and the coolth of the stepwell. There were many songs which were sung. There was a lot of food that was cooked and eaten there. Matrimonial alliances took place in these galleries. Uh, Also, we have to remember that these were times when the parda system was very much prevalent, and the stepwell was a form of gender segregation where the women could come into seclusion and enjoy the company of each other without being disturbed or watched by the people outside. So essentially, every bagh had a stepwell, and the stepwell was not only for recreational purposes but very basically to supply water to the living quarters within the bagh and to irrigate all the plants which were flowering shrubs and fruit trees that the people who were occupying the bagh used to enjoy. So these stepwells are quite deep. In the picture at the bottom left, you can see that it has two galleries which are visible. History records that there are at least two more. Of course, today there's a lot of trash which has been thrown in from the top. You can see plastic, waste, paper, all kinds of junk which is collecting in there, which is actually quite a tragedy because, as you can see, it still has water and it could be a perennial source of water for the community around it. But the ownership of these wells today is disputed. So it's not very clear who owns them, and therefore they are being neglected and they are slowly disappearing one after the other. One of the most famous stepwells in the city is the Badi Bauli at the Qutb Shahi tombs. This is open for everyone to go and see, and it's one of at least five stepwells on the campus of the Qutb Shahi tombs. History again records that the tombs were landscaped. They had a strong Deccani tradition of gardens, and the water from these stepwells was used to keep the area clean and for certain rituals that were performed in the ceremonies before the burial of a body. So many of these stepwells are either collapsed or have gone dry today because the water table in Hyderabad city has shrunk so deep that the groundwater is no longer available to fill these stepwells. What you see here are archival pictures of the stepwells at the Qutb Shahi tombs, and the following pictures will show you the story of what is happening there. So in the year 2018, a major portion of the wall of this Badi Bauli collapsed. It collapsed because the retaining wall had become weak due to age. It collapsed because of excessive rainfall, and all the rubble fell right into the well, and the well went dry. So the Telangana government decided to take the assistance of the Aga Khan Trust, who've been entrusted with the work of restoring the entire Qutb Shahi tomb complex. And one of the first things they did was to restore the well so that the water again could be used for the reconstruction activity. So using the stone which had fallen into the bottom of the well, they've reconstructed the walls that you see. These are pictures of the construction work in activity going on. They used lime mortar in exactly the same proportion as it was used at the time originally of the construction of the well, and they brought the well back to its original form of glory. This picture shows the barricading by means of plastic cloth and the scaffolding in place. And the wall that you see right in the front is the one you saw in the previous pictures that had collapsed. So the wall has been reconstructed. The arches and the galleries have come back into the original position that they were. So a gallery runs right around the periphery of the stepwell on four sides. It's called an arcade because it's a series of arches. And we knew at that time that there were at least two galleries. Most of the stepwells in Hyderabad are not more than 27 to 35 feet deep. This is because we are situated on sheetrock, and all the natural sources of water, the fissures within the rock, all occur at around that depth. However, now that the water table has gone so low, a lot of these natural sources of water have dried up, but they get reactivated in the monsoon. This is a picture of the well taken on the day that it was rededicated to the city. The Minister for Urban Development was there at the ceremony that day for the reopening of the well, and he's pointing out that the level of water has come all the way back to the top. So the water here is used to water the gardens and for construction activity. There's also a very intricate web of channels that brings the surface rainwater back into these wells so that nothing is wasted. Another fascinating well is on the campus of the English and Foreign Language University, which is just off Osmania University. This was an irrigation well, not attached to a temple, not attached to a mosque or to a caravanserai, and was excavated originally in the land that was given to a courtesan called Malakabai Chanda. She was a poetess, a singer, a dancer, a very powerful woman in the court of one of the Qutb Shahi Nizams. She was also a military strategist, and in return for her services, she was granted a jagir of land, where all the income from this land became her money to spend. And on this jagir of land was this stepwell. Today, that same piece of land is converted into the English and Foreign Language University, and this is an early picture of the stepwell. Here there are no arcades. There are basically galleries at 4 different levels and steps that descend in 2 or 3 directions to the bottom of the well. It has water at the time this picture was taken, but subsequently the water completely dried out here and the well went to seed. In the process of doing our research, we are able to find old pictures of the wells as they existed originally. So this one, we don't know when it was taken, but it's still at this time Osmania University campus, not EFLU. But this is about the oldest surviving picture that we could find of what the well originally looked like. And it was from this picture that this well was reconstructed, that was repaired and brought back to life. The restoration of this well was the initiative of some students. A few of them started observing that the well was being used for people to throw all their garbage into. All computer peripherals that were not in use were thrown in there, styrofoam, plastic, all the entire paper waste from the entire campus. This became really a garbage dump. Till a few students said, why don't we clean this up? And voluntarily the students who were living on the campus in the hostels began slowly from the top to take all the garbage out. They then petitioned the then President of India, who through the government sources mandated that the well should be restored and cleaned up. And these are the students who are sitting there looking very happy at the results of their effort, because the well was then cleaned up completely. Once it was cleaned, Pandit Jasraj was invited to come and give a performance of his music, and he chose a moonlit evening within which to sit on the platform that these students are, and he started singing without the use of any artificial amplification. There was no artificial lighting. Each of these niches that you see was lit with a clay lamp, and people sat in the galleries all around. Reports are that it was a magical evening, that because of the walls and because of the water, his voice actually reverberated so beautifully and the sound traveled so nicely that it was really one of the most splendid evenings of Hindustani classical music ever to be heard in Hyderabad city. This is one more picture of the well as it existed 2 years ago. This year there's a lot more water. One of the interesting things is that in the morning the pumps are activated and the water from here is taken out and it is used for the gardening purposes of the EFLU campus. They don't depend on municipal water, they have sufficient water within the stepwell itself. And by a process of percolation, by the evening the water is back into the well and the level goes back to where it was in the morning. Just adjacent to the Hakimpet Air Force Station to the north of the city, in Shamirpet Mandal, is this very old Sitarambagh Swami Devalayam in a village which is called Devar Yamjal. This picture was taken during our research when all of us decided to go one morning and to study the stepwell. It's attached to a very old temple which can be dated back to at least 600 years old, if not more. And looking at the style of construction of this stepwell, it might actually have been a late Western Chalukyan stepwell long before the Kakatiya dynasty also came into existence. It's built on a typical plan of a stepwell that we see repeatedly all across the state of Telangana, which is like a keyhole. You enter from one side and there are galleries on the three other sides as it widens out. As you can see in this picture, there is water in the center, which is the deepest part, and there are at least 3 to 4 gallery levels which are visible, so that the water could be accessed by descending a few steps at whichever level it was standing according to the season. Now these small rooms that you see on the surroundings, each of them was dedicated to a nakshatra. It's possibly the only stepwell that we've come across in the whole state where there was a niche with an idol for each nakshatra. Unfortunately, during the Razakar movement, the stepwell was ransacked. All the artifacts have been removed, they are no longer there, and there's a lot of structural damage to the top of the well. But luckily, the water sources have not been disturbed, and this well has never gone dry. According to legend, there is a snake which lives in the vicinity of this temple, which is a large king cobra. And the people in the village, as well as the temple priest, told us a story that this snake is the guardian of the well, which is the reason it has never gone dry. It's always had water in it. For the first time on the periphery of the well, we begin to see carvings and certain iconography which has been carved either during the time of the construction. We believe that the panel that you see in this picture has been a later edition. At any rate, these are semi-erotic pictures, and the mother goddess is shown on the left, and you can see that the pictures on the right have these mythical beasts which are in the process of cohabitation. So wells were considered an area of prosperity and also of fertility, and the presence of water was considered sacred for the well-being of people. This well continues to be used for temple rituals. The picture on the left shows you that the Vigrahams have been taken out and they are being prepared for the ritual bath where the priest actually descends the steps and submerges these three idols and takes them out. In doing so, not only is it a cleansing process for the idol, but it's also considered to be a cleansing process for the water in the well. There's a lot of haldi, a lot of kumkumam, which is put into the water, and we all know that haldi has antiseptic qualities. So this is a ritual that is continuing to be followed and practiced every year, and we were fortunate to be able to get these pictures on a day when it was taking place. The famous Sitarambagh temple, which is right in the middle of the city, stretches across something like 7 acres of land. And again, on the premises of Sitarambagh, there are at least 5 stepwells that we know about. The largest one is this one that you see. We were able to find a very old picture which shows 1, 2, 3, and 4 different galleries. And then a more recent picture that shows that the water has come up and filled so that you see only 2 galleries. It's by looking at these pictures that we are able to reconstruct the lifestyles of people, and we're able to understand how the water was actually drawn up from the well. Right across the picture from us are the pulley systems, and you can see that a rope has been put into the well. There was a bucket which was made out of cast iron, and animals were used to draw the water. So these went onto a ramp at the back, and the water then went into channels, and the channels irrigated all the temple lands and the gardens around it. This is how the well looks about a year ago when we took these pictures. There's a certain rhythm you can see of the construction of the steps. They are going in a zigzag direction. This you get to see a lot in the stepwells of Rajasthan. And the family that are the owners of the land here in Sitarambagh are originally merchants from Rajasthan. So it's possible that they must have brought masons from there who followed the traditions of constructions of stepwells in that part of the country and replicated it here on a much smaller scale. These pictures show on the left the pulley system. It's a picture taken from the top. And on the right, you see the steps and the retaining wall, which also has a stepped profile. The reason for putting in these pictures was to show you how granite has been used in all the stepwells that we find in Hyderabad city. The reason being that granite is very freely available, hardly 3.5 to 4 feet below the surface of the topsoil here. And in the process of excavating this well, there are a lot of rocks and boulders and hard granite that comes out. So right there on the spot, these things were chiseled into perfect rectangular forms and used in the construction of these stepwells. In documenting these stepwells, we have taken the assistance of the students of architecture from various colleges of the city belonging to the Jawaharlal Nehru Architecture and Fine Arts University. This was done because we were given a small research grant from the university research funds, but also as an academic exercise so that students could get not only to interact with the history of the city, but learn how to go and take measurements and document it and go back and make AutoCAD drawings of the wells as they exist today. A senior member of Hyderabad Design Forum, usually a faculty member from one of the colleges or an academician, is the leader in these expeditions that we take out. At least 15 to 20 students come with on each of these expeditions, and this is the process of documentation that you see in the picture, where people are holding the tape, making drawings and taking levels and so on to be able to go back to their studios and make an accurate drawing. In Maulali of Sitarambagh is what we call the Salarjung stepwell. It's on the premises right now of the railways, and this is a slightly different stepwell. It's a more recent one. It was built by the British government, who needed copious quantities of water for the steam engines that were operating here. So this well was basically built to provide water for the steam engines. But now that the steam engines are not in use, diesel trains have taken over. This well is actually now a source of water for the entire railway colony around it. So it supplements and augments the drinking water from the government, but there's sufficient water here for the hundreds of homes that surround this well. While the construction of this, like all the other stepwells that we see, continues to be in granite, which is being dressed into the form of regular stones, you can see that the British style of architecture in the form of arches, the classical styles of the Roman and the Greeks, have been used in designing the retaining walls here. Right on the top, you can see that there are 4 pulley systems, and these were used originally to draw water manually or by oxen. However, it's now been replaced by pumping systems. The steps that you see in the picture on the right, which are descending from the surface of the ground to the surface of the water, are much more functional. Aesthetics are very kind of minimal. There are just 3 arches that support the staircase. So this is not a decorative well. It's not used for recreational purposes like the ones in the baghs. It's not used in the temple kind of architecture. It's wholly a colonial stepwell, and therefore one of a different typology, which makes it so interesting. But what's the condition of the stepwells today? This really is the tragedy that you're seeing in this picture of the condition of the stepwells. The walls have collapsed. The ownership is not very clear. No one is interested in maintaining them. The water is all but gone, and all of them have become garbage dumps for people in the community. It's the most convenient place to put construction debris, plastic waste, domestic garbage. There are sewage lines that open out into the stepwells. So this really is not the use of stepwells, but the abuse of history, the abuse of stepwells, and of perennial sources of water. It really is a tragic situation. And we hope that successive governments will be sensitized to restoring these stepwells and making them once again a source of water, and for reusing them in ways that the communities can benefit from them. So while our ongoing research is not yet concluded, and we are still in the process of writing the book, we are nowhere close to publication. From the various presentations and exhibitions that the Hyderabad Design Forum has been having over the last 2 years, we have in some small measure been able to sensitize the people of the city into the presence of these beautiful stepwells. So all is not lost. Here in a very small way is right now an ongoing project at Bapughat, which is in Langar House. Bapughat, as many of you will know, is a samadhi to Mahatma Gandhi, but right behind there is the original stepwell that must have existed long before Bapughat was built. It's in the typical Asif Jahi style. It's a combination of pointed arches, jharokas. So there's a little bit of the Rajasthani style of architecture also here. And what is common with all the other stepwells of the old city is the presence of a gallery that runs along 2 or 3 different levels. So this is a very recent picture where the tourism department, who is now currently operating the area of Bapughat, this comes under their purview, and there's an NGO which has offered and which is now using their funds to restore the stepwell. So here is our final illustration. The picture on the left shows that the water has been pumped out from one level. You're beginning in the corner of the left of the top right hand to see the staircase. And as we keep going deeper, the staircase is more and more visible. You can also see the rock bottom surface of the well here. In the process of doing this, the people who are cleaning up the well were able to retrieve and live turtles, fish that were living there, which have all been temporarily rehabilitated and which will be put back. I'm happy to share that in the process of restoring this well, all the original sources of water, underground sources, have been uncovered. Silt has been removed, all the loose debris that has fallen into it, plastic waste has been taken out, and clear fresh water is coming back into the step well. Um, there's not much structural damage, but what little there is going to be repaired. The whole place is going to be cleaned up, whitewashed with lime, and lighting, proper protection is going to be done. So all hope is not lost. We hope that this one will lead to several other similar initiatives, and one day we can all succeed in bringing back to glory the Stepwells of Hyderabad. Thank you.